Hello and welcome to my review for Finding Your Feet, directed by Richard Long Crane. This is a film I hadn't heard about and saw a trailer for about a week ago and thought, that looks alright. And it just so happened I had a gap in my day where I could see it before I went to see another movie later that evening, so I took the chance and went to see it. My cinema experience was a little bit interesting because there was about maybe 10-15 people in the room, and there was a row of old women. And it is kind of an old woman film in that sense. It's certainly geared towards a more middle-aged to elderly audience, I think. And they were kind of just talking throughout the beginning of the film, and I was like, oh my god, this is going to be unbearable. And the plot follows a woman called Sandra Abbott who is married to a very rich man. She's kind of a society woman. She's very much about the image and the upper class and all that kind of stuff, played by Imelda Staunton. And she finds out at the beginning of the movie, after like 36, 37 years of marriage, that her husband has been cheating on her for the past 5 years. And he's trying to reason with her and stuff, and the women behind him are going, excuses, excuses. Like, they had no filter for keeping quiet during this movie, but it kind of became endearing by the end, and I actually kind of enjoyed it. But we follow Sandra as she realizes her husband has been cheating on her, and she goes to stay with her sister Biff in London, in a pretty much council estate, and lives in a flat, very dirty and all that. Well, not dirty, but cluttered, I should say. That's probably the best word to use. And Biff is played by Celia Imrie, who is just, she's always great in everything. I think I saw her recently in, what was that horror film? Cure for Wellness. Anyway, she was very good in the film as Biff, who, it's a film that is very by the numbers. Imelda Staunton and Sandra, she's kind of uptight and posh and everything, and then she goes to stay with her sister who's carefree and common, and by the end of it she learns a lesson and how to kind of be nicer to people and not to be so conceited, I suppose. And it's one of those films, it's rote, it's cliched, and I loved it. I loved it. Do you know why? Because its heart was in the right place. Timothy Spall is also in the film. He's lost quite a bit of weight recently, almost unrecognizable, but good for him, I guess. And he plays, I forget, Charlie, I think was his character's name. He's a friend of Biff's, and Sandra meets him, and, obviously they rub each other the wrong way, as they do, coming from completely different backgrounds. But a little budding romance begins to develop once she realizes that she probably hasn't got a future with her husband, because her husband doesn't just cheat on her, he stays with the mistress. And probably the best part of the film is when she's with her friends, her new friends, halfway through the film, and they run into her husband and his mistress in a pub, and she gets to really tell this woman what she thinks of her, and everyone just cheered in the cinema, and it was awesome. But it is a film that, it follows her kind of finding her feet. It's very cheesy in the form of dancing. She used to be a great dancer when she was a young kid, but then she stopped doing that when she started seeing this guy who, is more of a kind of, again, stately man, and she very much is the, servicing wife. That they go back to her house at one point to pick up all her stuff, and there's all the trophies that her husband has won through tennis, and she's like, I spent hours polishing those every week, and it's just like, Jesus Christ, And so it's this liberation of this woman at realizing that she hasn't really had a life of her own, gaining her independence, and she goes to dancing kind of groups with Biff and meets new friends and things like that. And again, it is one of those ones you kind of roll your eyes at when you think about it in theory, but the performances are so heartfelt. Celia Imrie is great, Imelda Staunton is really, really good. Timothy Spall killed me in this film because his character has a bit of a tragic backstory, and when that gets explored, I don't want to spoil it, I guess. Not that I think a lot of people will be rushing out to see this film, but he just broke me. Like, I almost cried at one point because his performance was so affecting. And it deals with, older people and the struggles that they go through at that point in their life. There's a beautiful scene in the middle where she goes to one of the dancing classes and they put a song on, and Joanna Lumley is in the film also, and she's dancing with this guy, and he's like, I gotta go, sorry, just give me a minute. And he goes outside and he's just kind of all messed up. Timothy Spall's Charlie goes out, what's wrong? And he's like, that's the song that was playing during our wedding. And he's like, it kills me every time I hear it, and I just wish that we'd gone at the same time, And again, you hear that stuff and it feels very kind of manipulative, emotionally manipulative for a movie to do, but it worked because the performances were so good. And it stretches credibility a little bit when they do this kind of flash mob kind of dance, you know, kind of old people dancing and stuff in, I think it's in Piccadilly Circus or something like that in London, and it goes viral, you know, and then they go to Rome to kind of perform, and it's kind of, yeah, a little bit, yeah, you know, but the characters and what they go through and the idea of lost time is really strongly conveyed in the film. So this was a surprise to me, because I did think it was going to be one of those kind of sickly sweet movies, and it is, don't get me wrong. But it utterly won me over by the end. Even the final kind of line and shot of the film is quite cheesy, but it kind of brought me up in the chest, and I thought, you know, I really don't care, because I could see people looking at this and kind of going, oh, it's a little bit, you know, too saccharine and all that kind of stuff, and you know, again, cliched, whatever you want to call it, and it is for a lot of it, but I just thought by the end of it, it really was emotionally satisfying. It's a feel-good movie, you know, and sometimes you just need a feel-good movie. It doesn't need to be kind of radical. It doesn't need to be, you know, really original, you know, with a great script that, you know, has this dialogue you never heard before. The cinematography was amazing. Sometimes you just need fun characters and a kind of a heart in the right place when it comes to the story that's being told, and that is what Finding Your Feet was to me. So I loved it. I would highly recommend you go and see it. Certainly not one of the best films that's out right now when you look at what's showing in the cinemas, but I think it's kind of one of those kind of maybe hidden gems, because it's definitely a film I would like to see again. And going into it, I really thought it was just going to be one of those throwaway films that has a few funny moments, maybe a little bit of emotion, but, you know, not one to go back to. This is one I will definitely watch again, and I'm looking forward to showing it to Connie and so on, and it was surprising. So there we go, that's my thoughts on Finding Your Feet. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.
It's alright by me. Apart from the fact he throws cans of Carlin into a tree. Yeah, he's really cool. Yeah, he's really cool. But he's not quite as cool as you, 'cause